What is going on, guys? It's your boy Shady Mike Gaming, and welcome to episode 3 of our Madden 24 franchise. We're going to be using the 2016 Eagles thanks to the 2016 mod for Madden 24. We are still seeking out that 35,000 subscriber mark, so if you like the video, please do hit like, and if you deem the content worthy, make sure you subscribe for more. All right, so last episode we covered I guess the debacle against the Atlanta Falcons, and we didn't get off to a good foot, but I wanted to move forward in the franchise a little bit of a quicker pace and see how we could do moving forward and see if, hey, maybe that was just a fluke, or maybe we might really need to make some heavy changes. I don't want to spoil it too much, but let's go ahead and get right into it. So after the Falcons game, we decided to simulate forward into the season and, like I said, really just see how this team does and how good or bad we are. One thing I've said at the start of this franchise is I don't care what happened. Like, I know the whole theme is like undoing the mess of Chip Kelly, but I don't care about what happened in real life. Yes, we need a quarterback, but we're not going to tank for one. We are going to try to win, and if we can make a playoff run, make a playoff run, but we just have to see where this team is at as constructed and what we can do going forward. The only rule that I did set in place for this franchise is that we will not under any circumstances be drafting Carson Wentz. We will go in a different direction. And honestly, we're not going to be drafting Jared Goff either. I don't like either of those two at the top of the draft. We'll definitely keep an eye out for Dak Prescott, maybe Jacoby Brissett later on, but we'll just have to see how the cards play out. So picking this up in week 2 after the Falcons loss, we're playing at home versus the Dallas Cowboys, and we were able to get the dub 22-14. And looking at the box score, it looks like we did pretty well. Michael Vick had an okay game, completing 57% of his passes, 1 touchdown and no picks, so that's always good to see. But the star of the game was LaShawn McCoy, who had 112 yards on 17 carries. At this point, me and my team, everyone that was on the stream, decided it would be best to simulate all the way through week 8, where we had a bye and it was the trade deadline. At that point, we could reevaluate the team, see how we're doing, decide if we want to be buyers or sellers at the deadline, and address all of our current free agents who we'd have to either re-sign, let walk, or trade away. This is especially important because in week 9, coming out of the bye and out of the trade deadline, we'll have a pivotal matchup with Dallas that could definitely determine the direction our season would go. Heading into week 3, we lost to Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Jets 27-17. Heading into week 4, we beat Kirk Cousins and the Redskins 21-10. In week 5, we lost to Drew Brees and the Saints 22-14. Week 6, we got crushed by Eli Manning and the Giants 38-13. And week 7, surprisingly, we were able to beat Cam Newton, Super Cam as I call him in this mod, 27-13. So heading into the bye, we are 3-4 with a nice victory there off of what's supposed to be a pretty good team. So now going forward, we've got some decisions to make on how we want to play out the rest of the season. All right, now to address the elephant in the room, free agency. Right now, the team is sitting at 3-4, and I've got some key free agents that I wanted to make decisions on now. The first of which is linebacker Michael Kendricks. Now, I promised myself I wouldn't let real life events impact this franchise. I was very devastated when the Eagles lost him in real life. He is an elite athlete with a 90 rated tackle, 89 speed, and 91 acceleration. I really didn't want to lose him in this franchise, but just like things played out in real life, even though he's marked as a star, he wanted a 5-year $105 million deal, and I just don't think that's something that makes sense for a team like mine who might not be able to win right away to invest over $100 million into the linebacker position. The next player I was worried about is linebacker Lance Briggs, who is an 86 overall, but at 34 years old, he's asking for $52 million. It just doesn't make sense. Another player that I really wanted to keep an eye out on was David Molk, a 26-year-old center who's 76 overall. Of course, I've got Jason Kelsey at center, but I was more interested in Molk and moving him over maybe into the guard spot, so I didn't want to lose him for nothing. And these were my three key guys that I really wanted to key in on and make a decision on these guys right now. So for Mychal Kendricks, I made an offer. It was 5 years for $94.5 million. And at the end of the day, he turned it down. And, you know, he wanted to be in that $105 million range. And I just wasn't doing that. So that was the first one that really I said, hey, we're going to have to get on the trade market and see what we can get for him right now. Now, for Lance Briggs, a great player, but for him, even at 34 years old, I just said we're not even going to get into that, and we're going to try and trade him to a contender and get some compensation now. So that was a given, but we did want to go over to David Molk, the center slash guard, and I put an offer out there for him. It was 3 years, $13 million, and while he did turn that down, at 26 years old, I just thought this was one worth pursuing. I decided to not trade him at the deadline, and we're going to keep working to see if we can't get something negotiated before the season's out. So we reached out to our friends, our in-state friends, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were 5-2 currently, third seed in the AFC, and actually had an injury to their linebacker James Harrison, who himself was 37 years old. So we reached out and we were able to set up a deal with them so they can continue their playoff push. We sent them Lance Briggs, and we in return got a 4th round and a 6th round pick. So an 86 overall player that's, yes, he's, you know, 34 years old, but I thought that was great value on that deal for both sides. It made sense for both sides, and we were happy to accept that. One thing I noticed about this roster was I actually had some depth at defensive tackle, where I had 1 superstar and 2 star defensive tackles. But what I didn't have on the roster was any single cornerback over 72 overall. So if I was really going to make a serious playoff push, I was definitely going to need to acquire someone in the NFL that could have a prayer at defending a #1 wide receiver. I actually looked to the Detroit Lions, and they needed some help at defensive tackle, and I was actually interested in one, Darius Slay, but he's only 24 years old right now and hasn't really come into his own. So I tried to put together a package for him, and what that ended up looking like was my starting defensive tackle, Benny Logan, who was a 77 overall, this year's 5th round pick that I got from Washington, and a 6th round pick, which is my own 6th round pick, and we sent that to to Detroit for Slay, and that ended up being a dope deal. So obviously that still leaves us with this whole Mychal Kendricks conundrum. We definitely have to move him, and because we're definitely not going to pay him. So the irony of this situation is the #1 thing I didn't want to lose with Kendricks was his speed at a linebacker position. That 90 speed, that 91 acceleration is just not very easy to find. I believe in this mod he is the fastest linebacker in the game. So I reached out again. Actually, it was funny because we were looking through the ratings. I reached back out to Pittsburgh, and they've got Bud Dupree, who's a rookie, and he's a rookie outside linebacker, more of an edge, who had similar speed on the edge. But one thing about the franchise tool that I did want to point out is it's extremely difficult to trade for rookies, because like in real life, they're barely ever traded. So you do kind of have to overcompensate if you're going to try and trade for a rookie. So Pittsburgh was not willing to budge off of him very easily. We know that he didn't have as high an overall as Kendricks, so they wanted Kendricks, and they wanted draft compensation. For a rebuilding team, you really don't want to be giving up draft compensation compensation, but I was able to get this deal done with a couple of late round picks. So with Michael Kendricks, the star development, 81 overall, I added a 6th round pick that I got from Pittsburgh in the previous trade on their other outside linebacker, a 7th round pick, and I sent them a 7th round pick, and got Bud Dupree back. And ultimately, looking at Bud Dupree and his ratings, I just thought it would make more sense to end this year out. I ended up moving him over to right end. So we're just going to leave that hole at linebacker vacant, and we're going to let Bud Dupree do what he does and be an edge and not have to worry about him dropping into coverages and things of that nature. So overall, it ended up being a pretty quiet trade deadline. I made a lot of the biggest deals. The Redskins also made another deal to acquire, to send away their star defensive tackle, Terrence Knighton, who's 29 years old and 85 overall. They sent him to the Tampa Bay Bucks for a 4th round pick and a 5th round pick. And then the Colts, their free safety, Dwight Lowry, 29 years old, 79 overall. They sent him to the Bills for a 5th round pick. So I guess I should definitely explain what I just did at the trade deadline using the My Franchise tool. First thing we did was we adjusted the trade block using the tool. What that does is it takes all of the players that have the veteran trade tag and may be disgruntled, meaning their morale is under 50, and it just puts them on the trade block to see, if they can get, any offers or good offers that teams would accept. Then they do the trade lottery, and this is described as a tool that adds additional players to the trade block based on rating, age, basically normal players that would potentially be on the block based on their contract, based on their situation, things of that nature. And it also makes it where the team that actually gets that player is a team that's in need. So there's no trade scenario that happens every single time. It's a lottery, so it's going to make sure that it's a little bit random, but it also makes sense to teams that would actually need that position. I think my favorite thing about that tool is that it says, hey, if it's a high performing quarterback, if it's a young star, or an O-lineman with a superstar dev trait, they're not going to be involved in this process at all. So from my experience, it actually worked really well this time in this franchise. So I'm excited to use that more in the future. So now with the team altered at the trade deadline, we made a move for a top corner. We made a move for a prolific rookie edge. It's time to go play the Cowboys in Dallas for a game that is going to determine the direction of our franchise right now. So in our next episode, we're going to talk about the aftermath of this game and what we're going to do going forward for the remainder of the season. Keep it locked to the channel, guys. I'll catch you on the next one. It's your boy Shady Mike. I'm signing out. Peace. Reese.